Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. So today is Sunday, November 4th, 2018, and we're getting very close to the 2018 midterm elections. Today we're going to be looking at the composition of the United States Senate and where the predictions land for the end of 2018 and the 116th Congress, which gets inaugurated, of course, 2019. So this is the current Senate that we have now. 49 Democrats, 51 Republicans, a number of Democrats in key Republican areas from 2016, 10 states to be exact, where Democrats have incumbents, where Trump won in 2016, which makes the map a little bit unfavorable in terms of their chances at taking back the Senate majority. But overall, if we're looking at the map itself, they are holding on to a number of states that they previously wouldn't have been holding on to if, let's say, Hillary Clinton was president. So the Democratic Party definitely doing a lot of damage control in a number of these Democratic states where Democratic senators may not vote in favor of what the presidential agenda may be. So they definitely are coming back and attacking GOP candidates on various things, and for the most part, it is working. In a number of these Republican states from 2016, 5 of them of which are already landing in the Democratic column, which you will see at the end of the prediction as to what characterization they get. For the rest of them, some of them are a little bit more in favor of the GOP than others, but we will eventually see where every single one of these states will be called, because as of today, I'm not going to leave any pure toss-up states, even though there are states that I could characterize as quote-unquote pure toss-ups. At this point in time, I do want to make a clear distinction as to who I believe will win at the end of the day. This map is going to change. I'm going to make a prediction tomorrow and then on election day before the election results actually pour in, so that we will actually have an accurate indicator of where this election is going to go. So 23 Democrats, 42 Republicans, 35 contested races. Obviously, there are more safer states than others. There are safe Democratic states and safe Republican states. So we're going to start off by actually filling in the safe Democratic states, just so you can see how many there are, which is why the map isn't too bad in terms of what goes into the Democratic Party's composition for the future Senate. So if we're looking at the map now, 35 contested races, only 23 Democrats, but when we're looking at these safe states, their numbers definitely do shoot right back up to where they're at a point where they could be pretty, I guess you could say, contesting worthy of the Senate. With 22 contested races, quote-unquote contested races, we do have some other safe states. I want to point them out first. So Virginia, pretty much a safe state because of Tim Kaine. He's already pretty popular there. Obviously, this is a Clinton state from 2016, Tim Kaine being the vice presidential nominee for Hillary Clinton's campaign. So that definitely does help his case. And also, he's going against Corey Stewart, not too popular statewide, had 2 contested GOP primaries, lost an election before. We're going to see how this race goes, but you can pretty much expect it to go in favor of the Democratic Party. Another safe state right over here in the state of Pennsylvania, Bob Casey's state. This is a state where he is pretty popular, and for some reason the lead hasn't narrowed down for Bob Casey, whereas in states like Michigan and Ohio, they have narrowed down just a tad bit. But right now, Pennsylvania is still holding strong for that Democratic candidate over the GOP candidate by plus 15 in the most recent poll. And to be completely honest with you, a lot of my subscribers, a lot of you guys did tell me that these Rust Belt states would narrow down. And for the most part, you are correct. They are, quote unquote, narrowing down, but they're still plus 9, plus 8, plus 7. That is narrower than plus 23, but it's still a win for the Democratic Party. These races aren't exactly contested. They're just less in favor of the Democratic Party than they were before. A win is a win when it comes down to 1 to 2 seat composition majorities, because any type of seat that goes in favor of either political party definitely matters. The win in Alabama only mattered because it added to the Democratic Party. The margin wasn't what mattered. If it was a blowout, sure, it probably would have been played up a lot more, but it wasn't a blowout. So right now, when we're looking at the numbers themselves, yes, they do matter in terms of re-election bids, in terms of how we're seeing the Democratic and Republican parties perceived in each state itself. But when it comes down to the party composition, it really does not matter. It only matters 6 years from now or in the presidential election. But still, midterm elections aren't exactly the most accurate indicator of what happens the following 2 years, as you can see from 2010 to 2012. But 38 Democrats, 42 Republicans. We do have some likely states, but actually first we need to cover the safe GOP states. Mississippi with its special election, and the state of Nebraska, Wyoming, and Utah. They have shot up to 47 seats, which means that if they hold on to 3 out of the 15, gain or take 3 out of the 15 seats remaining, they hold on to the majority because of Vice President Mike Pence. Keep in mind, when the Republican Party has a Republican vice president, 50 keeps them at the majority. The Democrats need 51, which is why the map looks even worse for them at this point in time. So, with 15 contested races, we've covered all the safe GOP states. They do not need a lot of explanation, considering that, again, these are states like Nebraska, Wyoming, Utah, and Mississippi. But we do have some likely states in favor of the Democratic Party. So let's go ahead and characterize those now. First is the state of New Jersey. Right now, Bob Menendez isn't too popular, but he's still expected to win here just based off the anti-Trump movement, a Democratic wave here. Everything really adds up to Bob Menendez's win here in the state of New Jersey. If you look at the 538 article that says, is New Jersey really a toss-up? No. The article itself definitely explains a lot of things about the state. I'm not going to get too in-depth about the race itself, just that I'm characterizing as a likely Democratic state. As for Ohio, that is another state I will characterize as a likely Democratic state, and that seems pretty surprising. Ohio is a state that Donald Trump won, nearing 9%, so it doesn't really make sense as to how a Democrat could win by larger than 5%. At a point in time, this race should have been contested. There actually was an article I read just this morning from 538. I get a lot of articles from 538, but overall, I was looking at the article, and I believe it was titled "The Surprises in the Senate Elections and the Ones." It just discussed the surprises they expected and the ones that they did not expect. And Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, these races should have been contested, along with West Virginia, actually. These races should have been more contested than they are now. They should have had GOP candidates, Ohio especially, with Josh Mandel, who unexpectedly dropped out. Things like that really did not help the GOP. These races are not as contested as they should be. These are Trump states. They should be swing states, but they aren't. So right now, Ohio goes in favor of the Democratic Party. Another state, the state of Michigan, that one goes in the likely column. Debbie Stabenow probably going to win, nearing 10%, so that way it's right in the middle between lean and safe, so it goes into the likely column. As for the state of Wisconsin itself, Tammy Baldwin isn't necessarily the most popular senator, but she's doing pretty good for a Democrat in a red state at this point. Trump isn't too popular here either, which definitely adds to the numbers. One contested House race, Paul Ryan retiring. A lot of things aren't necessarily favoring the GOP here. Not that popular of a governor in the state of Wisconsin. Scott Walker could lose. It really depends on Election Day what we see. They haven't covered that governor race much from the state of Wisconsin, but Scott Walker's going for a third term, so we're going to see how that goes on Tuesday, which is getting very, very close. For Minnesota, special election, that one goes in the likely column. Not the safe column because Tina Smith is still under that 15% mark in terms of her margin, but still going in favor of the Democratic Party regardless. And this is pretty surprising, but expected by some people, I guess. West Virginia goes in favor of the Democratic Party into the likely column. Right now, if we're looking at the numbers, Joe Manchin is doing pretty well. After voting for Kavanaugh, his numbers definitely did solidify, and his base did solidify. And West Virginia isn't necessarily the most Republican state. Sure, Trump won here by 30%, but they voted for a Democratic governor the same year. They also have a Democratic senator, Joe Manchin, who they are pretty favorable of compared to other Democrats in Republican states like North Dakota or even Indiana, Missouri, Montana. Right now, if we're looking at the numbers, Joe Manchin is one of those conservative Democrats that these Republican voters vote for. These are still Democratic Party members. These are the state of West Virginia itself has more registered Democrats than Republicans, but Trump won here by 30%. That doesn't necessarily make sense if we're looking at just party numbers alone and partisan composition, but if you're looking at the candidates they vote for, it definitely doesn't make sense. These are Democratic voters, just old Democratic voters, if that makes sense. Southern Democrats, but not too Southern. It's really hard to explain, but West Virginia is one of those states like Montana where they don't necessarily always vote for the GOP candidate just because they have the Republican title by their name compared to other states which are pretty much exactly like that. Same thing goes for Democratic states. It's not just pertaining to Republican states. Just this is the prime example of one of those bipartisan states. So 44 Democrats, 47 Republicans. Let's go ahead and take a look at some other likely states if we do have any. In fact, we do not. So that moves over into the likely GOP states. And there's only one likely GOP state at this point in time, and it goes to the state of North Dakota. Heidi Heitkamp is currently the Democratic incumbent from this state. It is now moving into the likely column because the margin will likely exceed 5% at the end of the day. It could narrow down leading into the election. We'll see exactly how it goes. But right now, the likely column is just larger than 5%. So 5.1% would be characterized as likely, all the way up to 14.9%. So with 44 Democrats, 48 Republicans, North Dakota being the first pickup for either political party tonight, and it goes for the GOP and a Democratic wave year. Doesn't exactly spell out good news in terms of the party composition. North Dakota is probably one of those few seats that they can afford to lose. Actually, the only seat they can afford to lose if they want to have a shot at the majority. But right now, it isn't looking too good at this point. So 8 contested races. Let's look at the lean Democratic states. So Montana is one of those lean Democratic states. It goes in the favor of the Democratic Party because John Tester is probably going to win here by +3, +4%. His overall average is +5%, +5.5% to be exact. But right now, I expect this race to narrow down. John Tester is coming from a Republican state. The at-large House district is also contested as well, but I don't expect this to be a blowout for either candidate unless something drastically changes by Election Day. So that adds to the numbers for the Democratic Party. 45 and the GOP at 48. So let's see if there are any other likely Democratic states. At this point in time, actually, Florida could be characterized as a likely Democratic state. It could narrow down, but it also could be around 1%, 1.2, 1.3% margin for Bill Nelson over Rick Scott. For some reason, Rick Scott really blew his lead, leading for 3 months and then dropping right up into the election does not sound like a good sign, I guess. In terms of the governor's race there, it isn't also likely to go to the GOP. In fact, the governor's race is more expected to go for the Democrats than the Senate race itself. So we're actually going to see some very interesting results from the state of Florida, especially with a number of new voters and a number of early voting results that may be favoring the GOP now, but we'll actually see how it turns out on Election Day. So 46 Democrats, 48 Republicans. Let's look at the lean GOP states. So state of Texas is a lean GOP state. Ted Cruz is from this state. He's pretty unpopular for a Republican in a quote-unquote safe Republican state, but Texas is no longer that. There are a number of new voters, a number of, minority voters that are coming out to vote that typically don't vote, so that's definitely going to benefit Beto O'Rourke. Looking at the race itself, it's very hard to make a clear distinction in terms of the margin, but one thing is pretty clear, that Ted Cruz is probably going to win here. If Beto O'Rourke wins here, that'll be a huge breakthrough for the Democratic Party. Having a Democratic senator from the state of Texas says a lot. Texas is one of those stereotyped southern Republican states. If they're able to get a senator there, it'll almost be as big as Alabama. In fact, it could be bigger. We're looking at a state that really doesn't vote for the Democrats. They have 2 Republican senators, 1 Republican governor, voted for Trump and nearing 10%. But one thing is definitely different. The state of Iowa voted more for Trump than the state of Texas did, even though Obama won here in the state of Iowa, and then it would have to switch over to Mitt Romney by 22% to reach that margin that Texas went to Mitt Romney in 2012. So essentially, for some reason, Texas is withdrawn away from the GOP. It could be because of Trump. It could be because of other factors. And other states moved closer to the GOP. But right now, Texas approves of the president. It approves of Ted Cruz. Looking at the numbers, it doesn't look too good for Beto O'Rourke, but it's not completely impossible for him to actually win at this point in time. So we've covered the, let's see, actually we do have another lean GOP state, and that gives the Republicans the official majority at 50 seats, the Democrats at 46. We're looking at the state of Tennessee. Phil Bredesen could win here. Quote, could. Right now, Marsha Blackburn is expected to win here because she has consistently led in all data. In terms of party turnout, 33% more Republicans than Democrats turning out in early voting. A lot of signs are pointing to a GOP hold here. Bob Corker, sure, he wasn't necessarily the best incumbent, so that definitely could hurt the GOP. It's too late into the election season to have a drastic change to go from +5 Marsha Blackburn to +10 Phil Bredesen, but we'll see at the end of the day. Looking at these close races, they're narrowing down to +5, +3, +2 for a Republican state. So even if Phil Bredesen doesn't win, the Democratic Party definitely can turn to that and say, we only lost by 3% in a state like Tennessee, which means that they're going to have a lot more opportunities, or they're going to think they have a lot more opportunities in a number of other southern states. Like if 2019 rolls around, Kentucky, Louisiana could be their targets. It really depends. So not 4 Republican seats. Actually, 2 Democratic seats and 2 Republican seats that we're looking at right now, 4 contested races in total. Let's go ahead and start characterizing the tilt Democratic states. So Indiana is the first one. Joe Donnelly is probably going to win here by a very narrow margin. Unfortunately for Mike Braun, he's at a point where this race is probably going to land the same way that it has been trending in favor of the Democratic Party. Mike Braun has been doing a little bit better because the Libertarian candidate necessarily numbers have been going down. The Libertarian candidate is probably not going to get 9% on Election Day, which could help Mike Braun. But the margin does come down to less than 1%, which I think that it will be in favor of Joe Donnelly. That Libertarian candidate is probably going to be a spoiler for the GOP, if we're being completely honest about the situation itself. Going over to Arizona, Kyrsten Sinema is still expected to win here. Unfortunately for Martha McSally, she has been unable to bring back those numbers that she got right after the primary. Kyrsten Sinema led in every single poll, and then after the primary, McSally led in 2. And then Kyrsten Sinema took the lead again, and then it went back to McSally, and now Kyrsten Sinema is in the lead in the most recent poll. But again, it's not just polling data. We're looking at a state that has drastic changes in terms of how it's voted in the presidential election, with 2 non-incumbents because of John McCain and also Jeff Flake, and now we have John Kyle back into the Senate. It's very different than what we're expecting. Martha McSally went through a contested GOP primary, quote-unquote contested GOP primary, but we're overall looking at a state that is having a number of changing demographics. This is in the Sun Belt. This is an area where immigration is a top issue. So when it comes down to the approval of the president, he necessarily isn't approved here. I think he's at a 0 or -1 in the state of Arizona, but it's very interesting seeing the results there. But right now, Arizona going in tilt favor of Kyrsten Sinema over Martha McSally. So we're definitely going to see a very contested race here. Tilt means it's less than 1%. So we're going to see actually how this race turns out on Tuesday, giving the numbers to the Democrats a total of 48 with 2 contested races left to go. So Nevada and Missouri, I'm going to move both of those into the tilt Democratic column, officially tying the Senate in favor of the GOP. The state of Nevada itself is a Clinton state from 2016. Arguably, it could be a Democratic state, but also you could say the fact that If we're looking at the pure voting numbers, yes, Democrats are up in terms of early voting data, but also these Democrats aren't too partisan either. This state narrowly went to Hillary Clinton. This wasn't one of those blowout states like Virginia and New Mexico compared to other states. When I say blowout states, these are swing states that went to Clinton in New Mexico by 9 and Virginia +5, whereas in states that Trump won, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, plus less than 1%, Nevada plus 2% for Hillary Clinton. So if we're looking at an area where we have Dean Heller, pretty unpopular, but also Jackie Rosen isn't necessarily going to win by such a large margin that we can't move the state out of the tilt column. These tilt states are definitely going to be a lot closer, and they're going to be very contested all the way up into Election Day. Even though it's 2 days away, there are definitely going to be last-minute moves from either sides of the political aisle that are going to try to alter the way that this race changes. Because, again, we're looking at singular races that could impact the way that the composition of the Senate goes in the end of 2018. If Missouri goes to the GOP, same numbers. If Missouri and Indiana go to the GOP, they gain one in a Democratic wave year. It doesn't necessarily look good for the Democratic Party if they're losing seats in a year that should be their own, in a year that should be completely against the president, and they already have one loss in the state of North Dakota, whereas the Republican Party has 2 losses in Nevada and Arizona. But again, those races can change. So Missouri's moving into the tilt Democratic column from pure toss-up column because Claire McCaskill is probably going to edge this one out by around 0.4% leading up into 1%, but nothing larger than that. Claire McCaskill has gotten extremely lucky with all of her past GOP opponents, and she has now again. So when we're looking at the numbers themselves, it's an exact tie on Real Clear Politics. 538 gives a narrow edge to Claire McCaskill, and I'm going to have to agree with that. Claire McCaskill is the incumbent, so on Election Day, she's going to have that factor that a lot of people just vote for the incumbent. But again, a lot of people do also know Claire McCaskill. This isn't some unknown senator because this is a contested race. But for some reason, there's been a lack of attention from the media, a lack of attention from polling companies, very little attention from the president himself. He is going to actually campaign here, but still, looking at the pure numbers, it's a very contested race, which is why that I moved it into the pure toss-up column even before this most recent poll came out that showed a dead even tie between both candidates. But right now, this race is going to move from toss-up into the tilt Democratic column, adding to the Democrats' numbers at 50 to the Republican Party's 50. So the Democrats have a net gain of 1, a little bit more blue on that map than before, just in different areas. And overall, 50 Democrats, 50 Republicans, and that's the composition as of November 4th, 2018. So thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.